Yeah, we're getting it going here. Howdy, y'all. Welcome to History by Phillips. I'm Mr. Phillips, and this is part 4 of the lecture series of Manifest Destiny. In the first part, we talked about the Oregon Country and the issues that we had with Britain in that territory. Second, we talked about the Texas, how it became the Lone Star Republic, how it pretty much became its own country there for a little while. Yesterday, we talked about the war with Mexico, and with the war with Mexico, the United States was able to acquire the Mexican state of California, the New Mexico territory, was pretty much the southwest of the United States. And they also they got all of that with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848. And they would also uh, purchase the southern part of modern day Arizona and New Mexico in something called the Gadsden Purchase. The reason why they bought that was because ideally it was going to be easier to build a railroad on that terrain than what the terrain the United States on. But I digress. Today's video is going to be on California. They'll be reaching statehood here, and Utah. Utah's a little quirk in the system, I guess you can say. Neat little history behind them. Uh, but let's get into it. Like I said, we'll be talking about two things. It'll be two things today: California and Utah. First, we'll be talking about California. First, we'll be talking about California. With California, they're going to find gold. Uh, Find gold. Everybody's going to strike it rich. Everybody in the world, not only the United States, but in the world, is going to bum rush this area. They're wanting to strike it rich. What better way to strike it rich than dig up a shiny rock out of the dirt? That's what a lot of folks will be doing. You'll see a mass migration to California from all over the world. For example, a lot of Chinese folks start coming. First group arriving a group about 300 in San Francisco, I do believe. But from there, they'll establish themselves and start changing the culture somewhat there in California to what we know it as today. Second, we'll be talking about Utah. Utah is, you could say, the American religion. Now, what I mean by that is, no, not most Americans are Mormons. What I mean by that is, Mormon was founded in the United States. It would be started by a guy named Joseph Smith in New York. But eventually, the Mormons would move out west so they can implement their idea of a perfect society, try to be that light upon the hill, which everybody looks at. All this will take place under the ideal of manifest destiny. That's our God given right. Well, what better? I mean, you have a religious group going out west. I mean, they'll claim to have a pretty strong understanding of that as they're moving west. This is our God given right. So we'll be talking about Mormons in Utah after California. So California, they discovered gold in them there hills. Sutter's Mill in 1848. They figure out there's gold in Sutter's Mill. Uh, News of this it takes a little while for news to spread. They don't. I got the Twitters, or the Facebooking, or the Instagrams, TikToking, whatever. They gotta rely on snail mail, usually delivered by a horse, hand delivered. Telegraphs and stuff. They'll be coming about here soon. I do believe I have some, but either way, it takes a little while for word to get out. But they discover gold in Sutter's Mill. Everybody's going to strike it rich. Everybody hears about it. That says lawyers dropped their briefs. The preachers threw away their religious books. Farmers threw down their plows. Criminals threw away their tools. Everybody just dropped what they was doing, and they was going to head west. They're going to strike it rich. Uh, you also got folks from Mexico. I mean, this was a Mexican state, so Mexicans are going to be here. South Americans, people from South America, Europeans, Australians, and even the Chinese. A lot of this will take place in 1849 because remember, it takes a little while for word to travel back then. But by 1849, everybody's coming in droves. This is a mass migration. 80% of it's going to be Americans just flooding in from the east over here, from like areas of Texas and the southeast and the northeast, like the New England and the southern states. 80%, they'll make up 80% of this mass migration. But keep in mind, you see all over the world, people are coming here. Uh, Now, keep in mind there is some legalities with this. Keep in mind this was a Mexican state. I don't know why I'm adjusting this. This was a Mexican state. After the War of the United States, the Mexican War, California all of a sudden found itself in ownership of the United States. Well, the United States owned them, which was fine. The United States just brought California in like there's always there. Uh, the Mexicans living in California, they was uh, getting citizenship, just like nothing's really changed for the most part. Just all of a sudden they found themselves as Americans. But the Mexicans live in California after the Americans won it in the Mexican War. They would be known as Californios. Uh, Now, Californios, they got full citizenship, but a lot of them would lose their land. This is kind of a dirty way how the Easterners, I guess you can say, would trick them. So they'll be coming in, and they got to keep their land. They didn't really have to do nothing for a good while. This is where they've been living all their life. Well, all of a sudden you have this mass migration coming in. And everybody's they're taking pickaxes to the hills, to the mountains. They're trying to look everywhere. Well, these Californios are on land that everybody wants to search for gold. Well, they start bringing them to courts like, you need to prove ownership that you had this land before the Mexican War, blah blah blah, or the government's just going to buy it out from under you. Well, the problem with that is Mexican. You can think of them like Native Americans around here. They didn't really view land ownership like we do. Like, how can one person own the land? It's more like communal, if that makes sense. They didn't really think folks can own it. You just lived there and worked there. You didn't really own it. Uh, so obviously they're not going to have documentation saying, "Oh, I own this piece of land." Uh, I mean, you can't expect somebody to produce something that they've never done before. But this is the United States. Welcome to the America. We do everything with documentation. This was an underhanded way to get the land out from the Californios. This would leave a strained relation between the Latin American and European uh, folks living there, the ancestries anyway. But yeah, a lot of Californians would lose their land because of gold rush because everybody's wanting to take their land to look for gold. But yeah, with that, you start with California. You start seeing a lot of boom towns. The most notable one is San Francisco. It's one of the biggest. I don't know if it's the biggest city, but it's definitely in the top five. A lot of America's biggest cities that you see today started out as boom towns because of the gold rush. Uh, the world's gold supply would double during this. They would find so much gold that it would double the world supply. Uh, However, it wasn't the miners that struck it rich. I mean, sure, yes, there were some that found a lot of gold, but for the most part, it was folks that provided services to these miners. Think about it. You're moving out west. You're going to need somewhere to sleep. Well, somebody can sell you a bed for a night. You're going to need something to eat. Somebody can cook you a meal for maybe a quarter or two. Uh, you gotta get your clothes washed. You're gonna be bored. You're gonna want to spend your money on something. So you'll start seeing bars, gambling parlors, bath houses. Where I mean, it's not like you can just show up, take a shower anywhere. People actually had to buy to take a shower at these places. Uh, Getting haircuts, you name it. But folks like that the ones that establish shops that you'll see all a bunch of these little shops come and go. They'll find gold in the area. They'll establish a little rinky-dink town. These folks, they start providing these all sorts of services: cooking, cleaning clothes, giving place for people to sleep at night, providing entertainment, you name it. You start seeing a unique society around these gold towns. Typically pictured in bars, people getting drunk, wasting their money, yada yada yada. But one notable, just to prove the point here, you don't really hear about the gold miners. Like you don't really hear about all the famous gold miners from way back when. But the name you do recognize today, most folks still wear his name is Levi Strauss. Making pants. He struck it rich making folks pants. I mean, everybody got rich on. I mean, folks are trying to get rich on gold. He's getting rich on denim. Uh, People just needed stuff as they's working, as they's going out there. So folks like this that establish businesses and good services, They're the ones that really struck it rich, not really the miners themselves. With that, we'll transition into Utah. Utah can get another swig here. Mm. Oh yeah, California became a state in 1850. It would become a free state. Upset a lot of Southerners for obvious reasons, because hey, slavery. Ooh, we love slavery. The Southerners are not going to like California being in the free state. There'll be some more hoopla going on. Hopefully, we talk about the politics of slavery after Christmas. I hope we get to. But anyway, we'll talk about Utah right now. So Utah, it's going to be pretty much the Mormons' home base, the Mormons' territory. Majority of Mormons are found in Utah today. Mormons are members of the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter Day Saints. They would eventually establish their own place over there in Utah. Uh, they can view themselves as Christians. A lot of best way. I know a lot of folks around here are Christian. They consider the Book of Mormon kind of like the third testament to the Bible. You got the Old Testament, New Testament, then you had the visions and revelations given to Joseph Smith, and this will be the, I guess you can say, quote unquote, third testament of the Bible. But yes, the Utah Mormons, the Mormons, they would be founded by by a guy named Joseph Smith. He'd be from New York. He claimed to have visions from God to go establish a new church. Eventually, he would say an angel gave him golden tablets. He translated these tablets into the Book of Mormon. This religion starts catching on, especially during religious revivals during the 1830s and 40s. The Mormons, they're kind of the hip new thing. Everybody's starting to become Mormon. Not everybody, but some folks. Roughly 10,000 in a span of a couple of years. But anyway, uh, but he had vision to start a new church. So the Mormons head west. Well, the first place they go to is a place called, I can't say this name. Forgive me, Nauvoo, Nauvoo, Illinois. It used to be known as Commerce, Illinois. The Mormons bought it. I'm sorry, I probably should know how they bought it. But what I've read and what I've read for this lesson, it says they just bought this town, so I guess they saved up. They did plan on doing this. If you don't know, Mormons, from the few interactions I've had, I've got some buddies that are Mormons, great folk, but they are very work centric. They'll get the job done. For the ones I've seen, I'm sure there's bum Mormons out there, just like there's bum everything out there. But for in general, from what I've been exposed to, very work centric. They're very dedicated to what they do. Happy go lucky people. I mean, I've never seen one not smile. But anyway, so I guess they planned on buying this town from get go. It's one of these western towns, so I guess they did. I don't know. But I digress. But a lot of folks, uh, they persecuted Mormons. They didn't really exactly what they believed. Especially some Christians. Christians were like, no, your interpretation of Jesus coming back and speaking to folks, yada yada yada, that's not true. So they got persecuted because of that kind of stuff. Eventually, it got to a point where a mob would kill Joseph Smith. Uh, a job killed Joseph Smith in 1844. So a guy named Brigham Young, he would become the new leader of the Mormons. I like to think of him as like the Pope of the Mormons. You know how the Pope is like the Catholic, or Pope is like the leader of the Catholics. Think of Brigham Young is the leader of the Mormons now. So Brigham Young, he's like, you know what? We're going to go even further west. We're going to Utah. A lot of folks think this is crazy because Utah, I mean, the terrain's terrible. Nobody really lives there because the terrain's so harsh. He's like, nope, that's where we're going. If we're God's chosen people, He'll provide a way. So He starts sending folks out that way. Uh, they'll start making their migration. They'll be part of these trails, going to Oregon Trail, the California Trail, Santa Fe Trail, you name it. They use these trails. And they eventually start settling here. The Mormons eventually spread out along about this region right here called Deseret. That's what the Mormons would call it. But pretty much the centralized focus point of that area would be Utah, uh, around the Great Lakes area. Here's what I mean, Deseret. That's their influence, I guess you can say. But this is a Mexican state at the time. They moved out there in 1844. The Americans would beat the Mexicans in the Mexican War in 1848. So all of a sudden, the Mexicans were cool with the Mormons being there because that's a harsh terrain. Whatever, they're not gonna hurt nobody. They're not gonna hurt us. We can tax them. Cool, whatever. Uh, However, the Americans were like, okay, whatever. We'll talk about it. But yeah, but like the Californios, the Mormons found themselves as American citizens overnight. This wasn't a huge transition for them since most of these were Americans to start with. I mean, they came from like New York, Illinois, just pretty much from the eastern seaboard. So they was already familiarized with culture, unlike the Californios. But it would take roughly 50 years for Utah to become a state. Now, remember, California became a state in 1850, just 2 years after the Mexican War. This would take about 50 years. Now, not that because Utah didn't have a population or the infrastructure wasn't there. The Mormons turned Utah into like the jewel of the desert. I mean, they planned their tans out to the T. I mean, Utah is a well run machine at this point. Now, the reason why it took them forever is because the Mormon religion, they kind of butted heads with the federal government. They didn't agree with certain taxes, certain legislation, stuff like that. So they not wanting to participate with that kind of stuff. One thing is their religious practices, and particularly polygamy. And in this case, polygamy allowed these Mormon men to marry several women. The United States is not allowed that; it's just against federal law. Uh, so not until 1896, when they gave up the practice of polygamy, they finally admitted to the United States as a state. But yeah, it would take them 50 years because of the Mormon beliefs. Not only polygamy, but just because federal officials come in, try to force legislation, and it just wasn't working. A lot of this had to deal with railroads. The railroads be coming through here. The Mormons felt like it's trying to take their land from them, yada yada yada. But Mormons were the one controlling this area. I mean, if you needed water, you see the Mormons because this is a desert. I mean, they controlled about everything. Not much got done without Mormon help in this area, so you had to play ball with the Mormons. So it took forever for them to officially work out their differences to finally become a state. But that's it. I think that's all I got. Yes, that's all I got for today. Remember California? They found gold in '48. A lot of folks bum rushed that area in 1849. Be known as those folks be known as 49ers. Uh, the Californians that were living in California as a Mexican citizens for the Mexican War, and all of a sudden after the Mexican War found themselves as American citizens, were known as Californios. A lot of them lose their land because folks wanted to mine their land for gold, see if there was gold there. These Californios could not prove ownership of their land because Mexicans, kind of like Native Americans, they didn't really view like the concept of individual ownership of land is just foreign to them. It just so you can't expect them to provide documentation for something they've never like. It just doesn't compute with them. So a lot of Californians will lose their land because of this, and uh, ultimately because of the gold rush. Uh, and remember, it wasn't really the gold miners that struck it rich, but it was those that established businesses and provided goods and services. Uh, Mormons, they started out in New York with Joseph Smith. He had visions from God to head out west, and he would write the Book of Mormon. Uh, if you want to, you consider that like the third testament of the Bible. For my Christians watching this, I know there's a lot of folks around here Christian, or at least familiarized with it. We got a church on just about every street corner, you know. But I digress. Joseph Smith would end up getting killed in Illinois. Brigham Young would take over as the leader of the Mormons. He would send them west to Utah to the harshest terrain ever. The Mexicans at the time, this is a Mexican territory. Mexicans at the time was like, yeah, have that land. That land sucks anyway. It's so harsh. The lands you can't farm on it. You can't do nothing. Yada yada yada. Well, believe it or not, the Mormons turned Utah and Deseret into a very productive place, a paradise in the desert, a haven in the desert. Mormons know what they're doing. The infrastructure's good. Everybody's on the. It seems like it's a well-run society. Uh, because of religious practices and customs, it would take them about 50 years to join the United States. However, mostly because of polygamy. Not until they gave up polygamy did the United States allow Utah to join the Union. But that's it. This is the final video of Manifest Destiny. I hope you enjoyed them. I've been Mr. Phillips. Until next time, I think we're talking about. Yes, I think we're talking about the political differences between the North and South and abolitionism. Woo! We finally get to talk about abolitionism. We'll be taking slavery head on now instead of ignoring it like the American government did between the 1820s and 40s. We'll finally be tackling the issues of slavery. With that, we'll be talking about issues of racism, yada, yada, yada. But I look forward to that discussion with y'all. Until next time, I've been Mr. Phillips. Make sure you're logging into Edmentum. Make sure you're getting the Google Classroom, doing those discussion posts. You better do them today. Very important doing them today. But I digress. Until next time, take care. Peace.